every Sunday at 6 p.m. Zishan on air.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Zishan on Air. And we start today's program on a very somber note uh, in terms of what's happening and how things are certainly shaping up from a political violence to political assassinations. And there was this article wrote by Janet Daly in the Telegraph, which is a British news article and news publication, where she made her case. And I saw a lot of comments where she was invited to the US and she is welcome to the US. But her assessment is that the American dream is ending in a psychotic breakdown. And when I read that, it was quite interesting in terms of what she's talking about. So I'll discuss a little bit because this is a moment of reflection for all of us in terms of how we choose the right words and the choice of words and still open the channels of communication and communicate. And it's not easy. And sometimes if our point of view is not the same as other person's point of view, then instead of becoming angry or agitated or taking it to extreme levels, even someone's life, that's completely uncalled for. And it's very regretful that people, and I don't know who these people are, who can take someone's life, and life is sacred. So she basically started with, quote, "We got him," unquote, said the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox. He's a Republican governor in the state of Utah, where this very tragic incident happened, making an unqualified judgment of guilt on the man who had just been apprehended. Will they bother with a trial at all? And if so, how could any jury now be unprejudiced? She asked, as a question mark. Has Tyler Robinson, who is still being described officially as a suspect, quote unquote, already confessed and made it clear that he will plead guilty? Question mark. President Trump has expressed a wish for him to be given the death penalty. Has there been or will there be a psychiatric examination to establish that the accused, who had not even been charged when the governor held his triumphant press conference, is fit to be held responsible for his actions? She asked. And then she goes on. So she's a British. She doesn't live in the US. That's just my analysis. And she's saying, to British ears, accustomed to the principle of this innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, this was all pretty shocking. And even by American standards, this was rather exceptional. She does make a point here. And then she goes on, but these are exceptional times. This is no longer about a particular crime. It is a test of nerve for the governing class. Can rationality and moral decency be restored to the public square, or are we entering an era of lynch mobs and licensed mass hysteria from which there is no escape? Is this how the American dream ends? She asks. And then I would highly encourage all of you, and thanks for joining me on my YouTube channel and also through Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and all those who are listening to me on Legacy Media. I welcome you all. So you can Google this article. It's in the Telegraph, and it's by Janet Daly. The American dream is ending in a psychotic breakdown. That's the title. And then she talks about the founding intentions were magnificent. Obviously, age of reason incarnate, where every individual would be granted the rights to self-determination and personal liberty, and be guaranteed those rights by a written contract, the Constitution. Remember, we have the Constitution in this country, which unfortunately many politicians, they choose whenever they wish to, and when they don't like and doesn't fit their political narrative, they try to just cherry pick different even amendments or clauses within the Constitution. And then everything is then thrown back to the Circuit Court of Appeals. It goes through the circuit, and then those appeals and those lawsuits are filed, and then the US Supreme Court and those 9 judges, which, by the way, heavily tilted toward the conservative or right side of the spectrum, and then there are only 2 or 3 liberal judges or progressive judges, or appointed by those who are Democrats. So only 2 or 3. And then 6 are appointed by Republicans. So unfortunately, this is where we are. So she basically talks about there is real doubt now. The anxiety is quite palpable about whether that concept can survive a 21st century reality in which threats of death and retribution have become the common currency of public discussion. And this is happening. And that's is exactly where this whole situation, whether you like Mr. Kirk, who passed away, or you don't like him, unfortunately, his family and our thoughts and prayers go out to the families, both on both sides, even the parents of this alleged shooter, because the families have to suffer in the end. And the wife of Mr. Kirk, and then those 2 beautiful children, 3-year-old daughter and an infant, I would say. And this is where this whole article that she wrote in the Telegraph, Janet, she is making her case that discontent and resentment are built into the national way of life because they are the inevitable counterparts of success and achievement. Because success and achievement and this individual freedom and this is all ingrained into the American life. And she makes the case that if you are not successful, then the society or somehow people would consider those Americans as unsuccessful, or maybe, for lack of a better term, that they have not succeeded, or losers, or what have you in common English. And this is definitely that breakdown of the fabric of society. And that's basically the case that she's making. But unfortunately, when I read these almost 302 comments, I'm sure there are more now, where a lot of people praised her and praised her point of view, and some said that no, this is not the case in the United States of America, come and visit us. And that is also true, because it's a big country, it's a huge country, and what you see in the media is not depicting the accurate landscape or the American story, because the mainstream media, they have their own narrative with their own agenda, and how different power brokers, they lobby even the mainstream media. And most of us, we are aware of that. Or most of us, or maybe those who are paying attention, but many still don't. And you have to recognize what is behind the story as well. And that's why this whole situation has also stirred a lot of conspiracy theories, and it's a field day for conspiracy theorists, which is also bad for society, because then you're losing that touch to reality and everything becomes a conspiracy. And that's where we are also in terms of this entire situation. So she basically talks about more the 18th century French revolutionaries who expressed their support for American rebels against British monarchic rule may have assumed that they are fighting for the same Republican cause, but they were not creating a country out of nothing with an entirely new population of incoming peoples. The French may have rejected their monarchy, but they were still recognizable themselves. So she basically talks a little bit about history, and then tragically it seems that the very notions that were intended to be foundations of this model of an enlightened society are contributing to its downfall. The sacred right to free speech has been poisoned by malign actors who use the new social media made possible by technological innovations which burst upon the scene without any political consideration to foment violent hatred. Is it possible to distinguish the legitimate uses of freedom from the dangerous, irresponsible ones? She basically asks, that's her question. We may be about to find out. So that's basically how she ended her article, and I would highly encourage you to read it, because this is a time for us to take a step back, maybe take a few steps back in terms of who are we as a nation, as Americans, and it's upon each one of us. CNN has reported Trump has turned up the temperature after Kirk's killing. Spencer Cox is trying to turn it back down. For the approximately 40 hours between the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the announcement Friday that a suspect had been apprehended, finger pointing reigned on the right. Some Republicans and right-wing pundits and influencers spoke of quote-unquote war and their side becoming radicalized in response. President Donald Trump, who floated cracking down on leftists and liberal organizations he baselessly blamed for political violence, topped it off Friday morning by suggesting conservative extremists have been radicalized for legitimate reasons, while saying that, quote, radicals on the left are the problem, unquote. At a time when politicians and presidents usually call for calm and unity, his rhetoric was throwing fuel on the fire. And it wasn't difficult to see how that could lead to even more ugly places. And I am quoting CNN. So this is where we are. And unfortunately, those who live outside of the US may not completely recognize and understand the situation where we are in, because you don't live in the US, so you don't know our freedoms, you don't know the personal freedoms and liberty, even though many are questioning that, especially those who are not American citizens or legal permanent residents, although even green card holders or legal permanent residents, they're finding themselves not having their First Amendment right protected, because remember, it's about the US Constitution. So there was this beautiful poem or some lyrics from this one where someone said that children grow in the shadow of hate. Children grow in the shadow of hate, learning lessons we could never create, but we can stop it. The choice is ours, and turn the ashes back into the stars. So this is where we've got to make sure that if we're amongst children, if we're amongst those who are still growing up, although I'm still trying to grow up, right? We're all learning something every day. But in its true sense, I'm talking about children and those who we care for, and even other people's children. We have to create an environment of love, compassion, peace, and it's a reminder for myself and for everyone. So all of us need to play a role here. So with that, other world news, Qatar was attacked by the state of Israel, where they attacked the leadership of Hamas, and some people, in fact, lost their lives, and some low-level leaders of Hamas organization, which is a terrorist organization by the US State Department, and then Qatar, who was acting as a mediator between Hamas and Israel, they said that they are no longer going to mediate. Hopefully, they will change their minds, because someone needs to negotiate and continue to give peace a chance. So hopefully, calmer minds would prevail, and we can only hope for peace. And we got to ask the tough questions to those who have been trusted with leadership positions at all levels, local, state, and federal level, because active engagement from each one of us would certainly produce positive results. That is just something in functioning democracies, a functioning society, and engaged citizenry and engaged citizens take an active and positive role and continue to put political pressure on those who come back during the political season or the election season asking for our votes. And we got to look at their record, that how they voted on key issues, and what is going on with the economy, jobs, healthcare, and where are we on those key issues that belong to each one of us, regardless of what income levels that we're in. Because these are definitely difficult times when it comes to the economy, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to how much our dollars can stretch. So that's basically our message, my humble message to each one of you. And again, thank you so much. And hopefully we will certainly get to a society or create a society where we are willing to listen to everyone. And my personal belief is that we as Americans, we do listen to other point of views as well. Because when I was campaigning, when I was on my campaign trail, I even talked to people from all different walks of lives, with different political ideologies, with different point of views, with different viewpoints. And in many cases, some they did not even want to talk to me, and some they did make an effort, and I also made an effort to talk to them. And we ended up, even with those who were completely on the other side of the spectrum, to agree on 70 to 80%. And in fact, many people said that we're going to vote for you, and they never voted for the opposing party. Even some Republicans, they voted for me. So common sense solutions, that's who Democrats should be now. And obviously, we can only advocate for those at the local level. We don't know what's going on at the state level and the federal level. Since my election campaign was at the local level, so I can only speak for my own experiences. And that's where we've got to make sure that each one of us play an active role in our local communities. And we can do a lot for our city, for our county, for our neighborhoods, improving our roads, infrastructure, what have you. Because each one of us, we go on these roads, on these tollways, and on these highways and bridges, what have you, and on these ramps, right? So that's why local politics is important, and common sense solutions. And Democrats used to have the edge on common sense solutions. That's why Texan Democrats and Democrats in Texas can play a big role, even bridging the gap from New York to California, because we're a little bit toward the south of the Gulf, toward Gulf of America, as President Trump calls it, or many who still want to call it as Gulf of Mexico. That's entirely up to you, what you want to consider, or just call it the Gulf. So this is where we are. So if someone calls it Gulf of Mexico and someone calls it Gulf of America, and both are Americans, should we judge that which American is more patriotic just because one used the term Gulf of America versus Gulf of Mexico? And maybe the third person, independent, who knows, or maybe a smart fella, would say the Gulf, because he or she didn't even want to get into this whole debate or argument about, okay, what should we actually call the Gulf? At the end of the day, it's the Gulf, right? You can call it Gulf of America, you can call it Gulf of Mexico, you can call it Gulf, or you can even penalize people. And then at that point, maybe people will just toe the line. And is that good? Is that democracy? So these are the questions that we will continue to answer, because like many say, that America is an experiment, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around, that what does that mean? Because sometimes if the experiment goes wrong, then that's a big problem. So that's another issue. And sometimes the experiment obviously goes great. So that's also something that we got to understand, that we have the best governance system in the world based on this whole model of being a constitutional republic, and at the same time using constitution and laws to govern ourselves. And that's how we see people from all different religions, faiths, walk of lives and backgrounds, immigrants. They have contributed in the success story in making the United States the greatest country in the world. So with that, I'm signing off. We'll continue with the legacy media. And if you have not subscribed my YouTube channel, please do and share. And with that, thank you. And thanks for watching.